Jameson Williams, Jerry Jeudy. He's calling him skid marks. I guess that's Woody Marks. Kenneth Gainwell. Throwing absolute shade at the rookie. Needs one for his flex. And again, this is PPR. So Jameson Williams, Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy, top 10 in the NFL in targets right now. Who would know? Woody Marks, Kenneth Gainwell, Jameson Williams. I'm going to go Jameson Williams here. Graham, I'm chasing a ceiling. I'm chasing the home environment. I'm chasing Jameson Williams back-to-back games here. Where are you at?
Yeah, I'm playing JMO as well. What did Woody Marks do to deserve the Skid Marks nickname? I've heard this a couple times.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just funny. I think it's just funny.
Poor bastard, man. That's brutal.
Yeah, it's terrible. And the guy already has a nickname. Woody is the nickname.
What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Week 7 fantasy football start-sit decisions, players that you should be putting into your flexes and players that you should be putting on your benches. Theo Greminger and Graham Barfield every single week here on Fantasy Football Daily on the Fantasy Points Podcast Network and Fantasy Points YouTube. Graham, let's get it started. A player we've been very, very excited about for several weeks now finally had a big breakthrough game. Matthew Golden, somewhat quiet box score. Not a lot of people talking about this, but a season high 86 receiving yards, only 3 receptions, did have 5 targets. So 5 targets, that's the second most targets he's had all season long. He also had 2 carries for 16 yards, 13.2 PPR points. And what's notable here is Matthew Golden did this coming out of the bye week. We love seeing players trend up after bye weeks because it says that coaches are doing self-scouting and looking to get them the ball. Is Matthew Golden a player that you are trusting here in week 7 against the Arizona Cardinals on the road?
Yeah, man, this is a slate just filled with receiver injuries. So it's just like we've got, 15 good receivers to feel about. Then it's a bunch of like wide receiver 2, 3 flex plays. And I think Golden is at the top of that pile. You mentioned, typically we want our rookies to get a, post-bye bump. That didn't necessarily happen with Golden. He didn't play a lot more, but he's just a player who's continued to kind of trend up in his usage every single week, getting more and more involved. And I really just like this matchup. The Cardinals are playing mostly too high safety coverage, nearly 60% of the time. It's the 5th highest rate of too high coverage, and Golden, dude, is just crushing against too high, averaging 3.3 yards per route run against too high coverages. That easily leads Romeo Doubs and Tucker Kraft for the team lead. Also leads the team in targets per route run against too high. It really just, to me, this comes down to can Arizona keep this game close? But Golden certainly has some big play potential as a wide receiver 3 flex this week, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think wide receiver 3 flex is about right. We're not overhyping him, but based on the situation that a lot of fantasy managers are in, Golden might have been a player that's been on benches for you. You're going to get him in your starting lineup. And we want to see that comfort level with Golden because the next few weeks are going to be absolute pain, Graham. We've got 6 teams on bye week in week 8, then 4 in week 9, 4 in week 10. So if we can get Golden sort of in this 13 points or so range, I think that's something we're going to be excited about in the second half of the year. You mentioned Golden and against too high and Golden, some of the metrics are telling you. For me, with Golden, it's just sort of the eye test. There's been a couple games where we've left points on the board, and Golden just has this combination of speed, athleticism, and he's really a talented separator as well. So we're waiting for that big boom week. Maybe we get it this week against the Arizona Cardinals. Really, really into Matthew Golden this week as well. I'm going to be rocking him in a couple of spots because, like you said, I don't have any choice. I've got injured players as well. One player who we've been all over for the last few weeks, Graham, I think the two of us were ahead of consensus on this player when he was making his debut. And then we were starting him everywhere in certain leagues like the Green Bay week where a lot of people were apprehensive about using him. We were pushing Quinshon Judkins into our lineups. Last week, we sort of saw the bottom fall out where the snaps went down and we saw Cleveland being incredibly pass happy against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is this a 1-week blip on the radar? Quinshon Judkins has a dream matchup this week against the Miami Dolphins. Just how enthusiastic are you about him? Do you think that last week was sort of Cleveland sort of maybe galaxy braining it against a team that's been really generous against the pass in Pittsburgh. What do you make of Quinshon Judkins last week, and what do you expect from him this week?
Yeah, it's a twofold thing. Dylan Gabriel played one of the worst games I've seen a quarterback play this season. He missed just so many open throws within this offense. It was really tough to watch. So it was like, he played really poorly, and then it kind of just killed the whole offense, really. I mean, Harold Fannin was the only guy who did anything, but this is just like a dream bounce back spot for Judkins. You mentioned the Browns going way more pass heavy. This is a spot for them just to absolutely load up on the run. I mean, Miami is giving up 5.2 yards per carry, giving up the most rushing yards per game at 143. And dude, I mean, like, the Browns have been so bad this season, and they're still 2.5-point home favorites here against Miami. So like, I'm just laughing because it's like, Miami is, I mean, they got Rico Dowdle 2 weeks ago. It just kind of doesn't really, they got Kimani Vidal last week, to go over 100 yards. It really doesn't matter who they're facing. And now they get this just like stud running back that you and I have been all over all year in Judkins. So yeah, I think no galaxy brain this week from Stefanski. No, we just really have to dodge the poor quarterback play. But, the spread and everything is kind of pointing towards, Cleveland being able to compete in this game. This will probably be one of the better game environments Judkins has, the rest of the season. Just we're gonna be looking at a lot of Dylan Gabriel and Shadur Sanders kind of struggling, I think, to start, the back half of the season.
Yeah, and we've talked about this. I mean, I think if the game flow is going in the right direction for Quinshon Judkins and the Cleveland Browns, they're not going to have any hesitation giving him a 30 carry game. I think we're going to see a 30 carry game out of Quinshon Judkins at some point this season. They are committed to him as their bell cow running back. I think we're going to go look back on week 6 as sort of a blip on the radar as to what is a very, very strong second half of the season. Discussed Quinshon Judkins also with Ryan Heath. We did a rest of the season rankings update. Make sure you're checking that out over at Fantasy Points. You're going to get access to our rest of season rankings, which Graham and the team are updating every single week. Really going to help you with your fantasy football trades. You're also going to get access to Chris Weck's amazing weekly projections, which are going to help you in your redraft leagues, your dynasty leagues, and also in your DFS leagues. You can get access to all of this with a subscription to Fantasy Points. Use the code Theo and get 15% off. And we already have a number of discounted subscription plans for the rest of the season. The code Theo is going to get you 15% off more off those already very affordable plans. So make sure you check out Fantasy Points for the rest of the season. Graham, let's keep this going. You mentioned Kimani Vidal. We currently have Kimani Vidal as 16 overall in the running back rankings for week 7. Are you comfortably using Vidal this week? Looked really good last week. Give us a top 10 performance. I was impressed by his work in the passing game because we've talked about this the last few weeks where Omarion Hampton's rise and where he was scoring a lot more fantasy points also coincided with his reception totals going up. Vidal had like an 11% target share. He ran a route on a significant percentage of the Chargers' offensive snaps. And like you said, the rushing work, Miami aided, but Kimani Vidal, to his credit, looked very good. Are you in line with where we have him ranked?
Yeah, he's a really good RB2 this week. You can run on the Colts too. They're not like as nearly as bad as Miami or Chicago or any of those teams, but like they're just average. And yeah, I mean, we talked about this last week. I mean, I kind of gave Vidal a slight edge over Haskins just because after Hampton went down, he led that backfield in XFP, and then you mentioned last week, I mean, he just fully ran away with it. I kind of think the first 2 series, if you go back and if you rewatch that game, like they definitely tried to get Haskins going, and then Vidal just kind of got the hot hand and they ran with him. There's certainly some like downside risk that maybe Haskins gets the hot hand in this game and they just ride that. But yeah, I mean, you just kind of have to bank on this usage. I think the most bullish thing to me with Vidal is not just like kind of expecting him to get the passing down work, man, but like him getting the inside 10 work well over Haskins, got 3 snaps to Haskins, 1 inside the 10 is like, that's the big bullish note. So huge game here. Colts, Chargers, great game total. Like I said, I'm not like all in on Vidal by any means. Just I saw this report 2 days ago. I think the Chargers are still calling about some running backs because apparently Lauren Hampton's ankle is pretty messed up, but like for this week, yeah, Vidal is looking like a really good RB2.
And I talked about the two of us were both on Vidal last week. Big pat on our back. I hope you listen to Graham and I. We didn't think he'd score this many points, but we both said this
No,
back if you're gonna use one.
yeah.
We're not gonna go with that. We're not gonna do like revisionist history here. But we were definitely on Vidal over Haskins. The thesis came true with the pass catching ability, and we've heard this same rumor. And I addressed this sort of on the waiver wire pod and in my waiver wire article. I think that LA will add a running back, but I think it's going to end up being someone in the Jerome Ford, Devin Singletary, that sort of level of player, where I don't think Vidal is going to disappear. And
Yep.
people are worried about the rug getting pulled out from under them, sort of like Michael Carter had this really big, explosive 18-point week. And then you saw the following week where Carter was mixed in with Bam Knight. And then they basically had, his touches went down and his production went down. The difference here is the yards per carry. Vidal was really solid as a runner and as a receiver. There's no reason for LA to kind of get away from that. Also, Bram, did you happen to see the Chargers uniforms for this game?
I haven't. Are they wearing the
They're
powders?
absolute fire. Anybody who says they're not is a complete hater. I saw some of the people are mocking. They're like all yellow with like these blue socks. It's absolute fire. It's definitely going to be the uniforms are lending themselves to an over environment. That's just how hyped I am about them. One player that we were maybe a little too enthusiastic about, or were we just a 1 week early type here? The ugliest game of the entire weekend was the 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. And shout out to people on the West Coast who woke up at 6:30 in the morning to watch it. It was Denver versus the New York Jets. It was comically bad. The end of the first half was just horrible. A lot of the Jets wasted a really strong defensive effort and special teams effort to lose that game. But what was interesting was Mason Taylor, who the two of us were very enthusiastic about, laid a complete egg, almost was shut out completely. He had one catch on the week. Now you've got Garrett Wilson banged up. Does Mason Taylor go right back into what we saw from him in week 4 and week 5 when he sort of had a breakthrough usage-wise, the target totals went way up, or should we be benching him this week? Your thoughts?
Yeah, Taylor's a great bounce back play this week. I wrote up in start sit last week that Justin Fields was going to be in hell. I thought that he was just going to be pressured on like every drop back, and that basically came true. I mean, the Jets had been allowing a pressure on like 50% of the dropbacks going into that game, and Fields obviously just holds the ball like way too long. I didn't think he'd take 9 sacks and just like have a complete disaster performance, but yeah, for Taylor specifically, it's like Garrett Wilson's out. He might miss like a couple of weeks. It sounds like this knee injury is pretty serious for Wilson. And then he gets this great matchup. Broncos last week were, very good against tight ends. It's mainly just they get so much pressure. You got to get the ball out so quick against them. Carolina does not have a great pass rush, and they're giving up the second most schedule adjusted fantasy points to tight ends. Taylor last week, man, like we nailed the usage. He set a season high in routes at 86%. It's just that offense was so egregiously bad. Fields was so bad. They just really didn't stand a chance in the passing game. This game certainly has a little like shootout upside, that's for sure. Like gross shootout upside where like Fields throws a pick, Young throws a pick. We get some kind of fast pace, like, 45, 46 total point game.
Yeah, I think Mason Taylor is a great bounce back candidate. And you bring up Garrett Wilson. If Garrett Wilson, there's a chance for re-aggravation with an injury like this. There's also a chance where if the Jets are like historically bad and trending towards getting the number 1 overall pick, which they very well could be, there's a chance we get to the second half of the year and they just shut it down with Garrett Wilson. I realize they gave him the contract where people say, listen, they gave him the contract, all that good stuff. But end of the day, they're not going to mess around with a player that they put this much financial interest into to end up winning 2 games or 3 games. The Jets are really, really in a complete free fall. Over the years, we've talked about Jared Goff, and it's been a player where when he has a road game, it sometimes can be a wild ride where oftentimes you're going to see him put up lower scoring numbers. And then when he's at home, the splits have just been terrific where he puts up really big numbers. We saw, of course, Jared Goff in week 2 against the Chicago Bears, 33.9 points scored. Week 4 against Cleveland, lower scoring. And they now have only their third home game of the year here against Tampa Bay in week 7. Are we comfortably starting Jared Goff? And do you expect him to put up a strong fantasy number in what could be a shootout against Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Yeah, so quarterback this week is like super easy at the top. I think there's a clear top 5. You can put them in whatever order, in Daniels, Prescott, Mahomes, May, and Hurts. And then, yeah, very clearly after that, it's Mayfield, Goff, and Caleb Williams. I think Goff is like maybe should be ahead of Baker in this spot solely because you mentioned the home road splits. It's really just the favorite dog splits. Like when he's at home and favored, he's just like nails for fantasy, averaging 21 fantasy points per game. That'd be QB7 as a favorite over his 37 favored starts. And we nailed this last week. I mean, I think he finished QB17 or QB18 on the road as a dog in Kansas City. Only finished, scored with 16, 17 fantasy points. This is certainly a Goff ceiling week. And I really like this matchup too, man. Like, when you face Tampa Bay, you've got to be able to handle Bowles' pressures. You got to be able to handle Todd Bowles' blitz scheme. And like, Goff is just crushing against the blitz. Leads all quarterbacks in yards per pass attempt when he's blitzed this season. He also hasn't taken a sack on any of his blitz dropbacks this year. Just playing really clean, getting the ball out quick. Bucks blitz at the 5th highest rate at 36%. So yeah, love this game. I mean, it's just like Baker's playing at an all pro level, maybe one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. And he gets Mike Evans back potentially. And then, yeah, we get Goff at home with all of his weapons, just kind of a load him up game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Jared Goff, this is the week. It screams shootout environment. Tampa Bay in Detroit. We would be really disappointed if this wasn't a game that gave us points here. Baker is playing at an MVP level. I know Baker is missing multiple weapons, but we still expect for the Bucs to put pressure on the Lions. And the Lions, I think here, heading into their bye week, I think this is going to be one where they're really going to value this one, especially coming off of a loss in Kansas City. And also we have multiple defensive backs for Detroit that are a little bit banged up here. So we're going to have a chance that Tampa Bay is still going to be able to put pressure on them. We love this sort of environment for fantasy. And yeah, I think we go Jared Goff comfortably inside of the QB1 line this week with potential to be a top 5 scorer at the position this week. Graham, let's talk about Michael Mayer.
Yeah, Mayer was awesome last week. Ended up being like the nuts in DFS basically. And, right now Geno is just not playing well, not seeing the field well. He didn't really have to do that much last week. But yeah, Mayer is a really, really strong play with no Bowers again this week. I think he was our favorite streamer of the week last week. He'll be my favorite streamer of this week. Actually, I think I just wrote him up as a start in my article. Yeah, 80% route share, just a huge role. Got the 7 targets. This offense is struggling, man. Like I think we might see Jacoby Myers get traded here soon. There was some Myers trade buzz before the season started. Raiders season just kind of circling the drain here. He's kind of, Myers is just kind of fallen out of this offense completely. It was a great bounce back spot for Myers last week against the Titans and just didn't really do much. Mayer to me is really like the only non-Jainty Raider you can start in fantasy right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Mayer is super interesting. I think I'm going to have him inside of the top 10 tight ends this week. We love seeing that usage, and it's the lots going on here with Vegas. There's a lot of rumors here that Jacoby Myers might get traded any day now. There's a couple of big sources on X sort of pushing that one. Number of teams in the market for a wide receiver. You could see that the tight end position in Vegas is really an easy one to predict. It's Michael Mayer, and then when Bowers comes back, it's an absolute smash second half of the year. One other tight end that's set to have a strong week, and one that I'm really, really optimistic about is Cade Otton. Last week, Cade Otton had 5 catches for about 51 yards against San Francisco. This week, there are multiple injuries at wide receiver in Tampa, including Emeka Egbuka. You're seeing a group of guys like Tez Johnson, Sterling Shepard, Kendrick Johnson at wide receiver for Tampa Bay. Could Cade Otton give us some of the value that we had last year where he stepped up big time and put up huge tight end 1 numbers in that several week period when Tampa Bay was also thin at the wide receiver position?
Yeah, he's just kind of come to life last couple of weeks. He had 4 catches and 80 yards 2 weeks ago, had a nice game last week, 5 catches. You mentioned it, last season he played 4 games without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and now over 5 games without those two. He has 35 catches, 344 yards, got 2 touchdowns. He scored as the tight end 4 by fantasy points per game. So I'm with you. We just mentioned Mayer. I'm with you. I think he's a top 10 play this week. Otton is by far the best streamer on the slate at tight end. And, hopefully you picked him up in your tight end premium leagues. He's looking pretty good for the back half of the season. I mean, this is kind of looking like a lost year for Godwin with this leg injury. Egbuka's now, unfortunately hurt his hamstring. We'll see if Mike Evans is back to 100%. Otton's looking pretty good for, at least the next couple of weeks as a strong tight end 1 streamer.
And I'll give you a personal start sit that I have. It's an FFPC tight end premium format dynasty team. I have TJ Hawkinson and Cade Otton. This is also a team, of course, with George Kittle. I think we'll have some clarity on Kittle as we get towards the end of the week, but specifically between Hawkinson and Otton, if you had to use one this week, when would it be?
Definitely Otton. I'm out on Hawk. I've been writing him up as a sit for pretty much this entire year, and now they've got Jordan Addison back. Dude, you look at the last 13 games with Jefferson and Addison with Hawkinson. Hawkinson is the tight end 20 by fantasy points per game, just 56 catches, 596 yards, only 1 touchdown on his 73 targets. So, yeah, man, it's scary hours for Hawk. I think, he's pretty clearly trending towards kind of like a roster clogging type player. And, Jefferson and Addison have just been the clear first reads when they're both healthy, both playing on the field.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't have any trust in Hawkinson right now. And I think I'm going to go Otton over Hawkinson. I think I agree with you completely on that one. Let's talk about the Tennessee backfield here. We saw Tyjae Spears snaps increase. Is Tony Pollard now a player that we want to put on benches?
I think so. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with, this coaching staff change. Brian Callahan obviously got fired. He said, a couple days before the game, he wanted to get Tyjae Spears more involved. Maybe we see the pendulum swing back in the veterans' favor with this new coaching staff. I don't know. To me, this is kind of trending towards a really gross compartmentalized split. Pollard led this backfield in carries. He had 10 to Spears' 5, but Spears massively outsnapped Pollard on passing downs, 23 routes to just 11 for Pollard. Pretty brutal compartmentalized split for fantasy on a Titans offense that's the worst in the NFL by far. And now they have this just horrible matchup. Patriots are among the best run defenses in the league. Yeah, just full fade this backfield this week. And I think we're only going to be feeling comfortable about playing any of these Titans backs like maybe 1 or 2 times this year.
I might be at the point in this game, if I had to use one of the 2 Titans backs, I might be Tyjae Spears over Tony Pollard, because you brought up New England, how good they've been against the run, how we saw Tyjae Spears kind of get ramped up last week in terms of his snaps. And they're going to need pass catchers in Tennessee, especially with Calvin Ridley now banged up. So the Titans are an absolute train wreck. I think if you have a chance to move Tony Pollard in like a 2-for-1 to get another viable running back, I would go ahead and do that. This is an offense we want to sort of bench everybody. It's really, really bad news. Tennessee, it's sort of the best thing about Tennessee is we know we can use streaming defenses against them. This team could get really, really bad in a hurry. How about Arizona? Last week we talked about Bam Knight. Bam Knight found the end zone. Michael Carter had more touches. Bam Knight had more fantasy points. Are you looking to use one of these players if you're in a jam at the RB2 or the flex spot, or are you looking to find fantasy points elsewhere?
Ideally, you can avoid these guys. Last week, it was just a full-on split last week. Knight got 11 carries. Carter got 9. There was some buzz, I think, from Schefter maybe Sunday morning that they wanted to get Knight more involved. Carter ended up starting, but over the course of the game, yeah, it was very clearly, pretty clear split. Carter still played on the majority of the passing downs. It wasn't as big of a split as it was with this Titans backfield. But yeah, man, I mean, I'm trying to look elsewhere. Besides this Arizona backfield, Green Bay is a top tier run defense. They've been a little worse against the pass since the start of the season. Their pass rush is still obviously elite, but Green Bay is, bottom 10 in yards per carry allowed. They're giving up the 3rd or 4th fewest total yards per game, just not giving up a whole lot. in explosive runs either. So really, I think these guys are just like desperation, like RB4s this week. Dude, this is this is a repeat of last year. I feel like this is a carbon copy of last year in the sense that the running backs are just so much better, and we have so many good ones that like it's really hard not to find like 2 or 3 really good running backs to play, at least in your flex, and hopefully you won't have to be relying on these Cardinals guys.
Yeah, you're down bad if you're having to use an Arizona Cardinal in your RB2 spot or your flex spot. I actually had to use a Zonovan Knight, Bam Knight share last week in a team I'm sharing with Scott Barrett, where we've had some running back injuries, had Omar in Hampton, a couple guys like that. And we were like, it was like a miracle him falling into the end zone on that one touchdown sort of saved the week. Not looking for a repeat there, though, Graham. That's a tough one. We've got Houston coming off their bye week. We fully expected like Woody Marks to get ramped up, and then instead it was sort of the rug pulled from under them, and they sort of went back to Nick Chubb. Where do you think this thing's going? Are you looking to use Nick Chubb? Are you looking to use Woody Marks? Or do you think bench both and sort of see where the usage goes post-bye?
So I still think Woody Marks is an awesome stash. Like I still have him pretty clearly like highly ranked in the rest of season rankings. He's among our top 35 players at running back position. This is all about this matchup. I do expect Marks to get kind of a post-bye rookie bump, but this matchup is just terribly brutal. They're on the road against Seattle. Seahawks have the best run defense in the league right now, giving up just 2.9 yards per carry. Only team that hasn't allowed an explosive play on the ground. Just a brutal, brutal spot for this run game. And Nick Chubb has just not looked as nearly as close to his prime self. I do think we'll see a lot more Woody Marks over the full back half of this season. But yeah, it's tough using either of these guys just in this matchup. It's brutal.
Yeah, I think that the bet for Woody Marks would be that the coaching staff gets a little more comfortable with him and his snaps go up and become more consistent. And then you have the added bonus that Nick Chubb could sort of break down, and those two things could coincide. And Woody Marks would end up being a player that maybe we could use in the fantasy football playoffs or weeks close to it. So I'm with you. I love stashing Woody Marks. I think he's a really good stash in sort of all formats right here. And there's going to be some frustrated Woody Marks managers after his last performance. So keep an eye on that one. All right, Graham, let's talk about it. We have two major significant players that are most likely missing in week 7. Puka Nacua, who it seems likely to me that he's going to miss the game. It's in London. They don't want to risk anything. You've got the bye week coming up in week 8. So essentially you could give Puka Nacua 2 weeks off and then ramp him back up when you come back after your bye. Emeka Egbuka looks like it could be several weeks here. We don't have a complete clarity on how many weeks he'll be out, but he will be out probably a few weeks here. So you have this whole cluster of wide receivers where you could paint yourself a picture that one of them has a big fantasy game and a couple of them could have complete duds. Let's face it, they all could have complete duds, Graham, but we're going to attempt to find one here that could be helpful to fantasy managers. Let's throw out Tez Johnson. Tez Johnson, of course, had the big touchdown reception last week. Late round pick out of Oregon, was a really, really high profile college player who sort of slipped in the NFL draft because he ran poorly at the combine and he's tiny, but has looked pretty good this season when he's had limited opportunities. You also have Sterling Shepard, sort of your veteran, most successful player and most experienced player left in the Tampa Bay wide receiver room. We could throw Kendrick Johnson into this discussion too. Probably the third bet for me in this Tampa Bay hierarchy this week. But of course, he had a solid game last week. And then over in LA, you've got Jordan Whittington, who had 4 weeks last year, Graham, around this time of the year, where he had 4 straight weeks with double-digit. He had a few solid weeks of fantasy production. And then you have his teammate Tutu Atwell, who was a popular waiver wire ad last year when there were multiple Rams wide receivers dealing with injuries. Atwell had a 4 straight weeks with double-digit fantasy scoring numbers last year, and he's the most experienced wide receiver in LA, besides, of course, Devontae Adams. If you had to use one of these players this week in your starting lineup, who would it be?
I think I'm using Jordan Whittington. Bucks should be getting Mike Evans back. It sounds positive that he's going to return to practice this week, and if he's practicing, he's going to play. Rams have a bye coming up. They play the Jags in London, then they're on bye. Tutu Atwell hurt his hamstring in practice last week, so I'm not sure if he's going to play, and if he does play, he might not be 100%. Jordan Whittington's pretty good, man. Like, he was popped in some of our efficiency metrics here at Fantasy Points Data, was at the top in terms of first downs per route run, yards per route run when he played. It just, small sample, but he played 2 games with more than 50% of the snaps, had 6 catches and 62 yards on 8 targets. In one game had 7 for 89 and on 10 targets in the other. These Bucks guys, like Baker, is playing so well, but with Evans back, with Otton in the mix, they got Rashad White as well. You're probably like at best the 4th target, whereas Jordan Whittington might legitimately be their 2nd target this week. And as we know with McVay, like, he's going to throw a ton to Devontae Adams, no doubt about it. They're going to probably run a little more with Kyron, but he trusts Jordan Whittington, trusted him last season. I like him quite a bit as a flex play this week, actually.
Yeah, and I went with Whittington over Atwell in our waiver wire discussion on Fantasy Football Daily with Joe Dolan and Tom Brawley when I recorded that earlier this week. Whittington, again, I want to choose my words very carefully here, Graham, stylistically can do some of the Puka Nacua stuff. We saw it last year where Whittington was like absolutely dominant in the preseason. And then we saw in some of those weeks where Puka Nacua was out, he had his highest target totals of the season. I think this is a player that, and I know it's a player that Sean McVay really likes. He talked about him glowingly last year. So this is his opportunity. There's also a scenario where even if Atwell plays, Atwell sort of stays in his role and doesn't see anything ramped up. He's just sort of what he is. And Whittington would take on a larger role. So I'm with you. And I would say my one hope would be that they're not rushing Mike Evans back here, that we get Mike Evans over the second. You hate to think those things. You think teams are a little more pragmatic, but sometimes one injury can sort of put a little pressure on a guy to come back maybe a week earlier. So we'll keep an eye on that one. And certainly Mike Evans would be in our starting lineups if he plays, but I would be a little bit cautious about a player of his age coming back from injury. Let's take a couple of questions from some, I would say our followers on X, because we not listeners on this one. We are pre-recording this one. So we have these questions in the chat here. Mason Taylor or Harold Fannin, and this is in PPR leagues this week.
I'm going with Taylor. I was actually just looking at his prop, dude. His prop is at 49.5 over under for the yards. That's a lot higher than I thought I would see it. Obviously, they're pricing in no Garrett Wilson and this matchup. I was mentioning earlier that Dylan Gabriel really struggled, and like Fannin's awesome, going to play a huge role with no Njoku this week. But yeah, give me Mason Taylor in that matchup.
We usually agree on these ones. I'm going to butt heads with you. I'm going to go with Harold Fannin. We saw him have the big week last week. Like you said, David Njoku banged up. David Njoku also might get traded, Graham. There's some rumors there. I think Fannin, we've had this conversation last week from a dynasty lens, which is, I think, a little more nuanced, Taylor versus Fannin. But for week 7 specifically, I am rolling Harold Fannin. But I do think you made an interesting point that the Jets props are sort of saying that this is going to be Jets kind of putting up a couple points. The team total for New York is over. It's like 21 points or something, which seems odd even if Wilson's out. So I think you're going to see a lot of Justin Fields, a lot of Breece Hall, and probably a lot of Mason Taylor, but I'm still going Harold Fannin. JD Hill says Jamison Williams, Jerry Jeudy. He's calling him skid marks. I guess that's Woody Marks. Kenneth Gainwell. Throwing absolute shade at the rookie. Needs one for his flex. And again, this is PPR. So Jamison Williams, Jerry Jeudy top 10 in the NFL in targets right now. Who would know? Woody Marks, Kenneth Gainwell, Jamison Williams. I'm going to go Jamison Williams here. Graham, I'm chasing a ceiling. I'm chasing the home environment. I'm chasing Jamison Williams back-to-back games here. Where are you at?
Yeah, I'm playing JMO as well. What did Woody Marks do to deserve the Skid Marks nickname? I've heard this a couple times.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just funny. I think it's just funny.
Poor guy, poor bastard, man. That's brutal.
Yeah, it's terrible. And the guy already has a nickname. Woody is the nickname. You can't have two nicknames in this game. Can't have two nicknames.
Yeah.
So shout out to Woody Marks, not skid marks. We're not gonna use that term on fantasy points. You're Woody here in these streets.
Term of endearment for our guy Woody Marks here. Come on.
That's it. That's it. Shout out to Woody Marks. Half point PPR league. This is from Aaron Sprague. CeeDee Lamb, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, or Cortland Sutton.
Ooh, good problem to have. I'm playing Lamb though. That dude, I mean, Commanders Cowboys has a 54.5 total, I think. I mean, it's the biggest total we've seen all year. Dak playing out of his mind, Jane Daniels fully healthy. That's just like Cowboys defense. Just smoke them if you got them. But your boy JCM is definitely trending up. That's for sure. He's made some mistakes and they keep going right back to him. That's super positive. And with Sutton, like he's just been a really like good high-end wide receiver too, but as we've seen with Knicks, he's been up and down. So just give me the more consistent, better quarterback right now with Dak.
You got to go CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is the guy. There's a reason we drafted him as the wide receiver 2 this summer. Lamb in Dallas, it's gonna be absolute fireworks. I think with Lamb, George Pickens, Dak Prescott, and Jake Ferguson in a perfect storm scenario every week where the Cowboys can't stop anybody and they're going to score a lot of points. It's going to be awesome for fantasy. 30-27 Carolina, 40-40 Green Bay. And like you said, the highest point total. I mean, it's good. We're going to get a 30-27 type game here, especially with Washington coming off of a loss. I think this is going to be a divisional game. This is going to be an awesome one for fantasy. Fantasy Burner, shout out to Fantasy Burner, says, Bo Nix is killing me. 4-point passing touchdown format. Start Nix or stream Darnold, Michael Penix, or Aaron Rodgers. So you have pick one, Bo Nix, Sam Darnold, Michael Penix, or Aaron Rodgers.
Rodgers has the best matchup out of that group, but man, he's just like his ceiling is so low. He had the big game week 1, but yeah, tough spot. Texans are the best defense in the league right now against the pass. So it's tough to play Darnold. I think I'd stick with Nix. That's where I'm leaning. I know it's been gross though.
Yeah, it's been super gross. None of those guys get me that excited. Sam Darnold's actually been the hottest one here, but Houston defense, very, very difficult one. I think Bo Nix here against the Giants. I think Bo Nix is the one I'm going to go with as well. I'm going to stick with Nix. I think he's like a high-end QB2 this week, and I wouldn't push any of those players into the QB1 line. So I am going with Nix on that one. We have another tight end question here. 2 guys we've already touched on. Harold Fannin or Cade Otton this week?
I'd lean Otton. Just give me the better quarterback. It's kind of like the tiebreaker in this one. And then you mentioned, Mike Evans certainly could not be 100%. Maybe, if he plays like kind of a limited-ish role for him. Yeah, and they're going to need him, man. Like, they're down at Buka. I'm playing Otton over Fannin.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Well, actually, you know what? Yeah, I think I am with you there. I put a little second thought into that one, but I think you're going to go Otton in that one. Otton over Fannin. I think the game also is going to be very, very fantasy friendly. We talked about Tampa Bay, Detroit with Jared Goff. We'll stick with Cade Otton on that one. Thank you to Julio for that question. Got a question from Carlos here. With Puka Nacua all but certainly out, who do I start? And this is another kind of, I think we'll be in agreement on this one. Jamison Williams, Tedoroa McMillan, or Xavier Worthy?
Oh, Worthy. Even with Rice back, I mean, Mahomes is playing at such a high level. Raiders, their secondary stinks, man. Like they got Mad Max Crosby, shredding dudes out there, but that's really kind of all they got. Their only hope is that Crosby gets after Mahomes. Yeah, I'm playing Worthy.
Yeah, I might butt heads with you. I like Worthy. I think he's in the wide receiver 2 line, but I think I'm going to go Tedoroa McMillan. I think we started to see it last week with the touchdowns. I think we could see it trend up a little bit this week. So I'm going to go McMillan against the Jets. Carolina's hot. I think Carolina definitely is going to put some points up this week. And we like the way that offense is trending with Rico Dowdle. So I'm going to go Tedoroa McMillan, but you could listen to Graham on this one. I don't think either one of these guys is going to hurt you. And for that matter, I think Jamison Williams is fine too. But for me, it's McMillan. For Graham, he is going with Xavier Worthy. Final question here, and we'll end with this one. Actually, you know what? Let me follow up with you on your question. We talked about Mahomes. I had this conversation with Scott Barrett on School of Scott. I've had the conversation with Ryan Heath. I've had the conversation with Brett Whitefield. I think I'm on Patrick Mahomes as a QB1 for the rest of the season. Scott's on Lamar Jackson. I think Ryan's on Lamar. Graham sort of poured a little cold water on the last 2 weeks with Mahomes because Baltimore is just terrible right now and Detroit's so banged up in the defensive secondary. But I think see this as the Patrick Mahomes revenge tour. Gets back Rashee Rice. He's playing on fire. I don't think that the rushing yardage totals are going to be sustainable, but I think the rushing touchdown totals can be sustainable because of the lack of running back. I think I'm on Mahomes at the very top of the quarterback's rest of season, but I might be on an island here at fantasy points. Where are you at, Graham?
I think that's the right island to be on so far. He is the QB1 by fantasy points per game and by a considerable margin. I have Allen at 1, I have Lamar at 2, and then I have Mahomes at 3. That's the way we have it in our rest of season projections. And it's really close. Like their trade values are within a couple of points of each other. Just giving Allen and Jackson like a little bit of a head start simply because their bye is, about to be behind them. You're just going to be locking and loading them in lineups. And they both just have insanely high floors and ceilings. And that's my thing, that the tiebreaker is Mahomes is probably not going to be running as much, at least towards the middle of this season. He's said himself, he only really runs in playoff type games. So yeah, I think that's like the one tiebreaker is that, Allen and Jackson just have this massive floor and ceiling with the running. But yeah, I mean, Mahomes is comfortably like at worst, I don't think you could go any lower than QB4. Like I could make an argument for Daniels over Mahomes, but yeah, he's just playing at such a high level right now. It's where we have it.
Yeah, it's Bills have been sort of disappointing their last 2 games offensively, but you're right here. I mean, it's splitting hairs. All 3 of those guys are significant edges. Significant edges. So we'll end with this one. Rob Milner, Rashee Rice, or Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt this week. How hyped are you for Rashee Rice to return to our lineups? I know you're going to say Rashee Rice. I'm going Rashee Rice. Yeah. But what's the expectation level? It seems like Andy Reid's trying to cool the jets on everybody. You'll see how many snaps he's going to play. I think it's nonsense. I think he's going to play the whole game. I think he's going to play a very high snap share. And I think he's going to see very, very high metrics in terms of first read rate, target share, targets per route run, all of the good stuff. You're going to see Rashee Rice checking off boxes.
Yeah, good problem to have here, Rashee Rice versus JCM. But yeah, you've been waiting 6 weeks to get this guy in your lineup. You're playing him. He's at worst, wide receiver 11, wide receiver 12 on this slate. And I'm with you. I think the only question is like, does he play 75 or 80% of the snaps, or does he just like play the full game, 90, 95%? And yeah, great matchup too. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, Raiders secondary is very burnable.
Yeah, it's a lot of league shifting occurrences are happening here in week 7. Rashee Rice back. You could have George Kittle back. You could have CeeDee Lamb back. You could have Mike Evans back the same week that Puka Nacua, Garrett Wilson, and Emeka Egbuka are all missing. Really got to roll with the punches here in the fantasy season. If you need an edge, subscribe to Fantasy Points. Use the code Theo. Get 15% off of any package. You're going to get access to Graham's amazing start-sit article. You're going to get access to all of our tools. You're going to get access to my waiver wire column, to Tom Brawley's waiver wire column, and of course, the Everything Report from Scott Barrett and Ryan Heath. All of our amazing rankings, all of our amazing tools. Chris Wecht has been on fire with our projections. Our gambling picks are like crushing it right now. Shout out to Tom Brawley. He's been on fire with his props. We're everywhere here at Fantasy Points. We're going to help you level up as a gambler, as a fantasy player, and as a DFS player. Oh, and our Dynasty content, we're crushing with that as well. Make sure that you are also checking out my other podcast, School of Scott with Scott Barrett. You can check that out on Fantasy Points YouTube and wherever you subscribe to your podcasts. If you are listening to this one on the Fantasy Football Daily podcast feed, go ahead and give us a subscription to Fantasy Points YouTube, the fastest growing YouTube channel in fantasy. Check out all of Graham's work over at Fantasy Points and check out Dynasty Life, my Dynasty podcast. Subscribe to that feed as well. We're everywhere here at Fantasy Points. We're going to help you crush your leagues this season.